Hello everyone and welcome back to Polytactics. Today we are going to discuss strategies to optimize early expansion in Polytopia. This video is part of a short lesson series on how to improve your openings as a beginner or intermediate player. If you enjoy this lesson and want to see more, make sure that you subscribe, hit the like button, and let's get into it. Early expansion is essential for any Polytopia game that you're going to play. It can look a bit different depending on map size, type, number of opponents, tribes, etc. However, this concept is going to be key for every game, and understanding the fundamentals will help bring your openings to the next level. What do I mean when I say opening? I'm referring to anything that happens during the pre-combat phase of the game. You've just started, you haven't engaged with an enemy yet, and you're primarily focused on building up your empire. Before we can discuss expansion strategies, we must first understand how basic map generation works. Let's start with villages. Generally speaking, you want to acquire as many of these as possible. A village cannot generate on the edge of the map or within 2 tiles of other villages or your capital city. This means that upon finding one, you are able to exclude the surrounding area from your search for more of them. Keep in mind that once you step onto a village, you must wait a turn to capture it and another turn to step off of it again. Next up, we have resources. With the exception of empty forests, all resources generate within a 2-tile radius of a village or city. This means that if you stumble across some fruit, an animal, fish, etc., civilization must be nearby. Finally, we have ruins. A ruin cannot generate immediately adjacent to another ruin or village, or within a 2-tile radius of one's capital city. Therefore, ruins can also be used to help narrow your search for more villages. Now let's talk about fog. Polytopia is an information-oriented strategy game. Fog withholds information, so naturally it's ideal to clear as much of it as is practical. Moving diagonally typically clears more fog, so do this unless you have a good reason not to. Count the number of potential village locations, and move to uncover the maximum amount of those tiles, hence increasing your odds of discovering a village. Another option for getting rid of fog is using an explorer. Each explorer moves 15 times and can sometimes be very helpful in uncovering villages so that you can move your units towards them with maximum efficiency. There is of course an opportunity cost that comes with declining workshop, but that is a very complex dilemma that deserves its own video. For now, just remember to only choose explorer if the city is on the edge of your empire and either close to the center of the map or near an enemy's territory for maximum effectiveness. Certainly don't use an explorer with every city, but a well-placed one can sometimes give you an edge. And if you happen to meet an enemy and receive a tech trade, that's a nice bonus. Finally, mountains can be used to gain more vision, as standing on top of one removes all of the fog within 2 tiles. You do need to own the climbing tech to do this though, so unless you already have it, or have another reason for purchasing it as well, it's probably not worth the stars in most cases. Let's move on to units. Most tribes start with a warrior or other unit that can move 1 tile per turn. However, riders generally move 2 tiles at once, which can increase the pace of your expansion. Plus, riders are a fairly versatile unit that you may use throughout a game depending on terrain, so purchasing the tech for them early is usually a wise investment. It is important to note though that rider movement is blocked by fog, meaning they aren't much better than warriors at traversing uncharted territory. Not to mention, riders are more vulnerable to surprise enemy attacks on account of their lower defense stats. For these reasons, a mixed use of warriors and riders will likely yield the best expansion results. Move warriors to uncover fogs that you can take advantage of the riders' full 2-tile movement. While we're on the topic of movement, roads can be another great addition to your early expansion toolkit. This tech deserves its own video also, but what you need to know is that roads increase movement and allow you to travel through forests where extra movement would otherwise be blocked. If you have the stars to spare, building a road to help you reach a village faster is almost always worth it. Not only do you get at least 1 extra star by capturing the village a turn earlier, but it also allows the unit to move on to other villages a turn quicker, or for you to train another unit faster, creating something of a snowball effect with your expansion. Other technologies which may be useful for expansion are climbing, sailing, and navigation, as these allow you to move onto tiles which would otherwise be inaccessible. Depending on terrain, sailing is generally the most important of the 3, because it allows for water units and ports, which can be used for extra population or leveling up custom houses later on. Now that you have a basic understanding of the essential game mechanics related to early expansion, let's talk about some theory. Welcome to Theory Time, one of our favorite segments on the show, where we analyze complex topics and try to explain them in a way that is simple and easy to understand. Today we are looking at village acquisition. One of the main objectives in most openings is to capture villages as quickly and efficiently as possible. To illustrate how this might be done, I have created a very simple game. The goal is to capture as many dots as possible. On your turn, you may move from each dot that you own to an adjacent one that is unclaimed. So currently, I have two separate games going, one on the left and one on the right. The blue dot is our starting place. Pay attention to the differences between each game as they progress. Alright, as you can tell, in the game on the right I performed much better. Why is this? A couple different reasons. First, I prioritized control over the center. The center is key from a strategic standpoint because it is relatively close to all other parts of the map. Once you have the center, you can go in basically any direction with ease. Second, I went in several different directions. This allowed me to expand relatively evenly and reach all parts of the map very quickly. Now let's look at what happens when I add an opponent. On the right, I'm going to employ the two strategies that we discussed, and on the left I won't. As you can see, I did much better in the game on the right. Another concept that surfaces here is the idea of cutting your opponent off. If you can manage to contain your opponent to a smaller part of the map, then you have effectively limited their expansion. I know that this is a very simplified and idealized model, but the strategies and underlying mathematical principles apply to Polytopia as well. Controlling the center, diversifying directions, and containing opponents are all effective methods for optimizing your early expansion. Okay, that's enough theory time for today. Let's move on to an example to practice some of the strategies we've discussed. Alright, so this is what a typical spawn looks like. Today we'll be playing with Luxador, which happens to be one of the best tribes for early expansion. Its level 3 starting capital allows us to create several units without having to upgrade anything, giving us the ability to easily explore in multiple directions right away. The first thing I'm going to do is send my warrior west towards the center of the map, and make a second warrior to travel in a different direction. Next I'll go west again. Notice that by walking into the corner of my vision, I'm clearing 5 fog instead of just 3, increasing the odds that I find a village. And sure enough, we've got one. Because of the location of this village, and how village generation works as we discussed earlier, there is a higher chance of another one being located southwest of my capital as opposed to northwest. So we'll explore southwest first, and make a third warrior to send in the other direction. A good rule of thumb is to always make the obvious moves first. This allows you to gain more information which can help you make decisions for options that are less clear. So we'll start by walking onto that village, and then we'll continue moving in the other directions. We found another village, which is great. Now you may have noticed that we still have a lot of ground to cover before we reach the center, so I'm going to go ahead and make a rider to help speed things up. I know that there's a bit of fog in the east corner where a ruin could be, but we don't have to worry about that right now. We need to stay focused on finding villages and expanding as fast as possible. Alright, let's go north and see if we find anything. Okay, a ruin and a village. The village is our priority, but we'll send a unit to explore that ruin later. Now we're going to hop onto that southern village and send our rider directly west. Also, it looks like we have plenty of fruit, so I'm going to buy organization so that we can start upgrading cities next turn. I'm not going to talk about upgrading too much right now, because we'll look at early development in another video. Let's capture that village and end our turn. Okay, so let's step on this village, continue exploring outward, and annex the southern city. Finally, let's upgrade it and take workshop. The next couple turns are pretty standard. We'll keep exploring and do some light upgrading. I'll purchase hunting now with the intent of acquiring forestry in the near future. And let's make a warrior on the northern city to head back to that ruin. Alright, we'll just keep moving, buy forestry, and do some upgrading again. There are probably some inefficiencies here, but I'm just doing this as an example. Let's round out the turn by making 2 more riders. Okay, here we have a bit of a unit bottleneck, so I will buy roads to help me continue pushing outward, just as we discussed. And this is a good example of why it's useful to have another unit accompany a rider while it's uncovering fog. It makes the process much more efficient. Finally, let's go ahead and take an explorer on this city, just to show you what that might look like. Well, the explorer wasn't great, which sometimes happens. But as you can see, it's turn 8, we've made it to the center of the map, and we're well on our way to contesting for more space. Hopefully this example was helpful in illustrating some of these early expansion strategies. If you enjoyed this lesson and want to see more, please consider liking the video and subscribing. That's all for now. This has been Polytactics. I'll see you next time.